Everybody, and thanks to the Deputy and Councillor Ewan for joining. I'll officially open the meeting as we do have a quorum. So it's a meeting of the Economic Development Communications Committee for today's date, the 24th. The Deputy is an ex officio member, so no need to co-op. If someone could confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 29th of April.
I don't think I was present, but I'm happy to move that we co-opt the Deputy.
Oh no, she's here by right. Deputy, were you here for that meeting? Is anyone here?
I don't think so, but I can move it regardless.
Yeah, and I was here, so they can be moved. So if I move them and if they can be accepted, is there any problems with them being accepted? That's good. We'll accept the minutes. There is no supplementary item. Indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest on the open. Okay, and transfer of agenda items. There being none. We do have listed 6.1, but as Chairman, before you joined, Councillor Ewan, I was talking to the Deputy. The amount of material in there and the valuable information in there, my thought was, and I spoke to the Director earlier today, was that if someone could seek to defer it so we could find an appropriate time to corral more councillors, because I think it will feed into the broader economic strategy. And if we just leave it there on the agenda papers, it's unlikely to be accessed by many. So if there is if one of you is prepared to move that we defer that to an appropriate positioning,
I'm quite happy to move it. It looks almost like it should be a workshop. It's
same here. Agree entirely.
Yeah.
So there is a potential. Sorry, Deputy. Sorry, Deputy.
Can we defer it to a workshop, Chair?
Yeah, I think so. Chair, through you.
Yes, well that's good. Well, so Councillor Ewan has moved for it to be deferred to a workshop. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour? That being the case, Director, if you could move to make that happen somehow.
With pleasure, Chair.
Good. Moving to item 6.2. 6.2 in the agenda is the COVID's Economic Recovery Plan, July 2021 update. And if I could ask Luke to perhaps start appraising us of that situation. Luke, are you?
Yes, certainly. What I will do is I'll defer that to Marissa. I'll just come back from leave, Chair. So it's probably best place for Marissa to take us through that.
So Marissa will take us through.
Excellent, thanks. So we have here the second and what is planned to be the final update of the Economic Recovery Plan. And we've taken a similar approach to this one as we did with the first version. So it's populated with projects from across the organization based on input from managers on what's happening in their areas and also from speaking with the business consultative group. And we found when we were speaking with the group that the tone of the conversation had really shifted from the businesses need help dealing with COVID now narrative to the we're thinking longer term about the kind of things that will help the city flourish economically and that would help our businesses to flourish. So they talked a lot about things like urban revitalization, activation in the city centre, parking always a topic, and similar, more like medium to long-term focused narratives. So when we made this update, we took all that on board and populated it with projects that are, all of them are already online, so they're already underway with impacts anticipated during the life of the plan, which runs to 2022. So the idea being that unless the situation changes in a significant way, so for example, if there's further cases here in a lockdown that really affects businesses and the immediate sort of recovery work kicks in again, that this would be the second and final update. And although responding to the impacts of the pandemic continues to be important and something that we would really want to continue to monitor, that we begin to take that focus towards economic development and what that could mean in the context of COVID impacts. So it's just a slight shift in perspective, but sort of still dealing with the same recovery kind of situation that we're in.
Committee. Open for questions.
I don't really have too many questions. I mean, I think it all makes sense. I mean, you've chosen which the better, or either you or the business community's chosen which you want to get, you know, to continue in this different form. I suppose there's just one with the what was the name of the program? Oh, the Hello Hobart. Is that likely to be able to be transferred fairly easily to some different sort of format?
Chair, through you. Yes, it is. So I think what we've learnt through COVID is Hello Hobart has two really strong parts to it. One is it is a direct means of communication to a lot of businesses that we otherwise wouldn't. It's a great front of house for new businesses because staff from our team go out and introduce themselves and the council directly to those new businesses. I think the second part is it's proven itself to be a great tactical tool for the council and for the community. So if you think about the Passport to Hobart program, we were able to pivot quite quickly and roll that out. It won't have a place all the time, but I think as we'll have a chat about in the next item, I think that ability to be quite tactical in the way we respond to situations is very important for the council. And I think Hello Hobart has proven itself in the last 18 months particularly to be a very important tool for the council in that respect.
Councillor Ewan?
No, thanks. I just had a question about Hello Hobart as well. So yeah, if there's no further sort of questions or comments, I'm happy to move the item.
Just before it's moved, so can I just ask, because it's the last report of a COVID recovery, what's the natural further progress report just generally on economic development? Now you've got all this gutsy information plus the strategy we referred to earlier. What at the officer level do you recommend? Is it a quarterly report back? I wouldn't want to see this information, not necessarily parts of it that are just recovery, but how do we keep the data relevant, contemporary, and build on it for being ready for the next iteration, whether it's, you know, a boon of travellers and an impost on because of people coming to Tasmania, or exactly what you said, Marissa, that there's a COVID outcome here and we suddenly get locked down. So how do we keep the candle alive in this?
Yeah, through you, Chair, I think that the framework or the basis that has been set will need to be a constant guide for us as we move forward. You know, what we pulled together as a group wasn't only in the economic development team, but organisation-wide. So it was about each individual project that was being contributed to for our recovery. So I think we need to maintain that communication throughout each division as we continuously improve and move through the next iteration. So I think it's started the conversation, but I think we need to continue that through as well.
And with the agreement of the other members of the committee, I would see another report coming back in November at the latest to keep us active, keep us fresh, because as I said, I think you're holding data, particularly with your business, you know, the penetration you've made with the business community with the 700 plus people. You've got without a local chamber active, you are the only repository of a huge amount of information.
And I think, Chair, no, absolutely, we'll note that. There's no doubt the next iteration or next stage for us is a new economic development strategy, and you know the team are working on that. We also now, with Kelly Grigsby having commenced, Kelly also wants to have a renewed focus on economic development, and so as an ELT we'll be working with her around what that looks like and what that means and how that translates through to the work that the team does and translates through to the strategy as well.
And having, with the indulgence of the other committee members, looking at what is going to replace the retail space, which is stubbornly like the rest of the country, refusing to fill up, and we've got some sizeable tenements empty. But that doesn't have to be retail. It could become office. It could become a whole host of things. But whether or not we keep some form of survey going with other capitals and larger regional cities such as Geelong as to what's actually happening. Now, in that respect, even though we don't have, and we almost had, a committee for Hobart, I thoroughly recommend you start keeping up with the newsletters from Committee of Melbourne, Committee for Geelong, Committee for Perth, because they've got huge pieces in there which are free, which will inform exactly what CBDs are doing around the country.
And Chair, through you, I guess in respect of Hobart too, we're also watching what happens with the Confederation of Hobart Business, or Greater Hobart Business, I think, the new group that has been formed. So we're certainly keeping an active eye and trying to understand where they're at in terms of their membership and their goals.
Sure, I understand. All right, that's good. Well, Councillor Ewan, I think you put the motion, so put the recommendation, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of receiving the report, noting the recommendation, say aye. Everyone happy? Thank you. I'll move to 6.3, the grants program, and through you, Director, ask someone to give us a short snapshot.
So, Chair, what we're presenting to you tonight is our thinking around what the next iteration of a business grant program could be. What we're seeking from committee tonight, and ultimately councillors, a sign-off, if you like, on the broad principle of what the grant is to achieve, and then a delegation to the CEO to actually go away and develop up the program. So as I was referring to earlier, I think what we've learnt through the business grant program coming out of COVID is, again, there's a tactical space for the council to be involved in. We know that in the lead up to COVID, there had been a couple of different goes at a business grant program, and they had not been particularly successful in terms of take-up. Clearly, on the back of COVID, council took the right decision, which was to put a significant amount of money into a short-term business recovery grants program. You might recall there was an amount for an online, helping businesses get online quickly. We had a short, sharp $30,000 that went out to businesses, and that was very gratefully received and taken up. Then council made, again, a good decision to allow another amount of money, up to $200,000 for part 2 of the COVID response grant program. We saw, and we broke that into 2 sections, effectively up until December, and then from January this year on. The first half of the program had quite a high application rate and quite a high success rate, because there were still businesses at that stage that were clearly being impacted by loss of custom through COVID. And that was one of the criteria for that grant, was there still needed to be some demonstration that there had been an impact because of COVID. The second half of the grant program that we've run this calendar year has been a very, very small take-up. And we are reading into that there are now less and less businesses that are able to demonstrate a significant change in their business, ongoing change to their business because of COVID. Part 2, again, now that the budget has been approved, is there in fact for next year there is a small amount of money within the grants program that is available for business grants. In total it's about $56,000. Knowing where we had come from in terms of COVID, I asked the team to consider, well, what's the best use of that, knowing the history of our efforts in this space. So I think the team's come up with something quite clever, which I think hopefully allows businesses to do something meaningful with the money that helps build their customer base, but also in terms of using public money into private sector businesses, also allows, if you like, for a degree of community benefit as well. And so that's why we've come up with this Local Business for a Better Community grant, which is really about trying to allow businesses to extend their customer base, but through offering for example, some type of workshop or seminar which can help grow their customer base, but can also inform the community about something that might be pertinent to that particular business. So that's with that introduction, Chair. Happy to take questions and have discussion.
Open that to discussion for elected members. Deputy?
Did you get much feedback as to whether the other grant round was not what people were looking for, or what was the feedback?
Yeah, no, through you, Chair. We have had some feedback, Deputy. I think a lot of it was businesses being time poor in terms of the time it took to be able to tick some of the boxes required. Others were of the view that the amount that we were offering wasn't worth their time in applying for it. This is through the Business Consultative Group that have suggested some of these things. Also, I think as the Director mentioned before, it probably also shines a light on the fact that some businesses have bounced back a little better than we may well have anticipated. So they've been unable to meet the criteria to demonstrate the need to satisfy the requirements of the grant as it was set out.
And Chair, through you, I should say, we've tested this concept with the grant with the Business Consultative Group as well, and they were in general agreement that this was worth a try.
Councillor Ewan? Anything at all?
No, thank you. It's interesting to note the business's response to it, and I guess it's a good thing that they're no longer in need of this sort of grant, so glad to see some movement there. Happy to move the item.
Thank you. Just before you do that, in 2.5, you talk about the goals. Could someone give me an indication of what some of the projects and things that are audience consumer focused and loyal customer bases might be? What are they?
Yes.
What type of things would they be?
Chair, we have some examples in the report.
Oh, yes.
If you'll bear with me, one of us will find them very quickly.
Through you, Chair, presenting workshops or demonstrations on how to use sustainable products, 4.16, sustainable products by retail store who sell such products, a space for community to come and engage with the store in a unique way. For example, a board game retail store that offers a free space for people to come and socialise, play games in a safe environment. Another example may be educational tasting experiences with local producers. And finally, an information session held by professional services professional services provider such as financial literacy for young adults or people at risk.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Ewan, I think you've moved the recommendation, so I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Good, there we are. It goes through to council. 6.4. 6.4. The 6.4 is economic development, is the committee's review of COVID-19 format outcome of consultation, which is just whether we're physical or not. And the recommendation is physical meeting in this chamber. If someone could move that recommendation. Deputy?
I'll move it, but I'd just like to note that it's really difficult for me to attend. I won't be able to attend in person because this is the time that I'm at work. I'm in the back of my shop at the moment. So I'm grateful that we still have the facilities for me to Zoom in. And if everybody on the committee is happy for my attendance to be most likely via Zoom ongoing, then I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Director, I think we can do that for a while, can't we?
Through you, Chair, the reality is the meetings can still be hybrid.
Great.
It's really about whether the infrastructure of the committee is back in person or is also on Zoom. But
Sure.
yeah, through you, Councillor Ewan, absolutely hybrid meetings for all meetings at the moment are allowable under the legislation.
Okay, thank you. So that's been moved. Put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. That's good. 7.1, the committee action status report. Anybody wish to raise any matter or move the item?
I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Deputy. Anything, Councillor Ewan? You're happy? Okay, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Against, that's carried. Questions without notice on the open? Being none, what do we do? We have a recommendation to go to close?
Yes,
We
that's
can
right.
we move into close. Close the open. Thank you, Deputy. Closed portion, I'll just simply